continues. Let's talk about the patch that released yesterday. And this patch is the one that had a lot of goodies in it. The nerfs that we've been talking about for a while now. Let me see. Let me bring it. Hey, is this the right? This isn't the right one. Yeah, so anyways, the nerfs to Spirit Claws and Small Time Buccaneer, as well as the floors, the rank floors at 5, 10, and 15, and all the arena changes too that we have been discussing. So hey, actually here it is. So actually the rank floor goes all the way down to 20. I didn't actually realize that.
Yeah.
I thought it was just 5, 10, 15. Okay, so let's talk about that a little bit. I know it's only been like one day, and we'll dive into the arena one in just a second, but I just want to kind of get your thoughts just generally. How you guys feel about the patch after just one day of playing on the ladder, arena, whatever? Ratsmah, any thoughts?
Change is good.
Can you tell?
Like,
could you actually tell?
Yeah, oh my god.
Oh, okay.
In arena, you could definitely tell.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
I mean, as a streamer, since I play for a living, I do, the meta gets stale, everything, becomes like the same as yesterday, and it gets a little bit boring. As to whether the change is really good or bad, I'm not quite sure yet, but it is fun diving into a new meta with, different cards and different everything. So that's a nice positive to have there. But you can definitely tell. Yeah.
Okay. Good. That's definitely
That's pretty much as whether it's good or bad, it doesn't matter. Because it's changed.
Different. Yeah. We can't tell at least for another couple of weeks or so whether it's good or bad. Have you guys been seeing less aggro shaman and aggro warriors?
I mean, for arena, I imagine it's just a welcome to change. Honestly, I just can't see how. I don't play arena personally, but it just seems like an overall just good change. Like,
I think a lot of people that are like more try-hardy and they want to like average the highest wins or whatever, they like the change. They think it'll be it'll bring on a more higher skill cap arena.
Yep.
For people that play it for more fun, they kind of like dislike the fact that they're not going to see a lot of their favorite cards anymore. So it's all a mindset. But what I've realized with Hearthstone is that they can do whatever they want, and people will keep coming back and playing it anyways. So
yeah. I mean, the casual folks,
games in general.
I figured the casual folks wouldn't even notice, because they just don't play enough to even
the most
notice.
casual folk won't notice. Like, my wife would not notice if she logged into arena today and she just ran into new cards. But like, I guess I haven't found Zombie Chow in a decade. It's like, that happens.
Yeah. Okay, well, I think that's generally a good thing. I got a chance to play just a little bit, and I can say that out of my first 8 or 9 games, I haven't played any shaman yet. I played warlock, I think 7 out of the 9 times so far. My first.
Are you talking about arena or standard?
On ladder, just on ladder.
Okay.
Yeah. So I haven't actually played shaman quite yet. I don't think I've hit that group of people that are either just legend players going all the way up or whatever that little range is where people start playing the aggressive decks again. But
well, as far as ranked goes, for the patch, I guess I can touch on the competitive ramifications real quick.
Go ahead.
On EU, they released the patch, and Blizzard has it set up that just naturally the mobile patch doesn't come out at the same exact time as the client patch, which then they have it split so that if you play on the phone, you only play against people that are also playing on the phone, and if you play on the computer, you only play against people on the computer. And I think you can even choose not to patch your game and still log in on the computer. And for instance, Hoy tweeted a shaman deck with Doomsayers, and he was made top 25 with this on EU, and he was choosing to play on the old patch, which is a huge advantage because the people who don't patch their game are probably less skillful, if that makes sense. I don't know. I could probably figure out the words explain it properly.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
They're not keeping up to date with things.
Yeah,
they're just not as
there's factors that plenty of factors lead to that. So then he was able to only get paired against people who also were playing on that patch, which I don't even know how close his matchups were on the ladder. I don't know. So that was definitely pretty weird because it all went down the last day.
I mean, he has to update at some point, right? I mean, it'd be pretty terrible.
No. Yeah. Now, for NA, we couldn't do that. We all had to play on the new patch.
Okay. So eventually, even in EU, he
Yeah,
has
I knew
to.
they
Yeah,
had to, but there was
It was
eventually
just a
time
little
period,
window. There was a window where he was just like okay, abusing that.
where he was able to do that, which is
Yeah.
like not what you want. But Blizzard was kind of forced into releasing it yesterday because they promised it,
Okay.
which is like a little whatever. But yeah, as far as the nerf goes, people complain about the pirate package. Well, it's safe to say Buccaneer is gone. Pirate Warrior, though, was very plentiful yesterday on the ladder. A lot of people played it in top 100. The deck's still insanely good.
Yeah.
Buccaneer was actually more of like a detriment to that deck's power level in the way that Rogue or Shaman could play it against them.
Yeah.
Also, Spirit Claws is gone, so that's another good card against Pirates. So now, like, the Pirate Warrior deck it's not over. Its overall power level isn't higher, but its power level compared to the rest of the meta is actually higher than it was previously. But because of the way that it can only go face still, pretty much, the other decks are going to be able to eventually tech to have like just defensive options, where like before it's hard to just have defensive options because they don't work necessarily against Shaman as well, because Shaman can also play a value game. But yeah, there's a lot of people trying out new decks. Aggro Shaman was pretty much gone except for a few people. I don't think it'll completely disappear though. I think you'll see it back. But I think mid-range Shaman will definitely probably be the dominant Shaman deck.
Yeah, not
moving
surprising.
forward.
That's right. I heard people were playing like Corsairs and things like that in their warriors instead of the small time Buccaneers. It's just like, okay.
The remove one durability
Yeah,
from your weapon. Yeah, that's how bad it was.
That's
that's what we needed to do to beat the other Pirate Warriors.
Yeah, that's really funny. I think one thing else to notice, or that I noticed here, was like there's a little Android update here with we optimized the Android distribution, allowing for smaller install sizes and smoother patching in the future. So I'm not sure if that was the client thing that they were mentioning before.
Pretty sure that might be it. Yeah, when they said, when we want to deploy patches and changes to cards, then we need to have the infrastructure adjusted so that we can actually change faster. It sounds silly, but like they can't come outright and say we're not changing cards right now because the infrastructure is just not in place.
Well, of course.
Like it sounds bad, right? But the truth of it is, like that might have been a legit technical hurdle, because as soon as you ask somebody to download like over 100 megabytes of data for something on mobile phone, you're already losing like a huge chunk of your downloaders. And then if you increase it even further, it gets more ridiculous. So
yeah, and then
that might have
there's
actually been an issue.
It's the only reason I question it is because it's only Android. It's not actually iOS at all. So
it's a different distribution though, right?
Yeah, it is, but I was thinking that comment he made before would be just across the board, just a design change to the entire client, whatever platform it was. So I'm not 100% convinced that is actually it, but if it is, that'd be great. That'd be wonderful that if they can patch it patch it from the server instead of updating. It's gonna be hard to update anyway. It's like having all your clients be like different versions. There's always like a good week, or sometimes even 3 weeks before the majority of your users actually have the latest update. So yeah, I'll just wanted to point that out because it was a little curious as to what that was.
How big was your patch on Android? That's the question. I haven't even looked. I haven't downloaded it, but if I tried it out, I'd be curious to know.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's talk about the arena changes since
they had some bug fixes. That's always good. They missed one.
Oh yeah, which one?
They missed if you mulch and your opponent gets Sea Reaver, you can see it.
Oh gosh, yeah.
I don't know how they haven't fixed that yet.
I remember that.
It's still around. Yeah, they haven't fixed it. I was looking for it in this bug fix.
Blizzard spaghetti. It's just I don't know. I don't know, man. Sometimes.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about the arena changes and implications of them. And we've been alluding to some of them, but the biggest thing is just the standard change, right? Just going from wild to standard. What's your thoughts on that? And pros and cons?
Man, like I said, a lot of more try-hard players really like the change because it was a little bit more random what your deck would turn out to be. There was a lot more variance in what kind of cards you'd be offered and the strength level of those cards. Me, myself, personally, I love all the cards, playing a lot of them. So I'm definitely was not in favor of it. Yeah, I think it's fine though. Like I said, change is good. I think like the bigger violation of just like arena in general as being like more of a wild mode is, just changing the offering rate for specific cards. So what they've done is, they cut the offering rate for Flame Strike and Abyssal in half, and that's nowhere on the client. So you would assume as a new
Yeah.
player or someone who doesn't know about that, that you would get offered that spell, Flame Strike, at the same rate you get offered something like Fireball. And I think once we set a precedence for doing that for specific cards, the rules of Arena become more and more muddied up. And that's just,
Yeah.
I think that's ugly. I think it's so
I think I
ugly.
have to agree with you, man, because if I think about, playing around Flame Strike, suddenly why? Like if you know that you have to choose between Fireball and Flame Strike, these are two very different examples because
Yeah.
not that likely you'll have to play around either or. But the difference is actually massive in terms of how likely you're gonna run into one or the other. So I think it's not meant to be taken like a literal draft mode, like in the way you think about Magic, where everything's equally likely to be represented. But if you can't know for sure, like there's no
It's
info
not
on the client
transparent,
anywhere,
yeah.
so I don't know how to. You're supposed to expect your players to have to make the correct guess.
I mean,
in
also, I
most
mean,
spots.
I just don't understand why they made Flame Strike cut in half.
Yeah,
I'll
it
talk
isn't
to
even that big a
Mark about
deal.
this. Yeah, the more powerful card and card that probably wins more is Firelands Portal. So why single out Flame Strike? It's different from Abyssal. It's not like they're both spells. One's a minion, one's a spell. They both kind of have AoE. So I just don't understand how they're choosing these cards to single out and nerf. If it's because of the community complaining on cards, are we now playing a game where the community chooses what cards don't show up in Arena?
We've been playing that game for a while in Standard.
Yeah, I don't like it. You guys can keep that.
No, thank you.
Arena, I don't know.
Thank you.
Yeah, like
It's pretty ugly.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, Blizzard definitely needs to find ways. Well, I get an argument to this is that casual players actually it doesn't matter to them that Flame Strike's at half. I don't know if that's an argument they use, but it's an argument you can use. But Blizzard definitely needs to find a way to make when they make a change, it needs to become transparent. Like this month, they changed how the ladder system works, the MMR, the matchups and stuff. So it's less about getting like a 65% win rate or 67% win rate. And kind of I described it before as like I would bash my head against the wall better than like someone else was bashing their head against the wall. Like we were just beating players who necessarily weren't like as good, and it was whoever could beat them quicker, faster,
higher volumes, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Where now it's more about having a consistent win rate over a number of games, like a 58% over like 200 games, where like that wouldn't have got you anywhere near top legend before.
Yeah.
Now it does because you move up and then it normalizes and it's more about that. But they didn't even tell anybody.
Yeah,
it just happened, and then someone asked Ixar about it on Twitter, and he's like, I don't think so. And then he like comes back the next day and he's like, yeah, we just did that behind the scenes and no one knew.
Yeah, just to clarify on what he's talking about, this is ladder. The MMR, just the matchmaking system, which used to, I'm not sure exactly what the algorithm is, but the result of the algorithm used to match up like, people possibly in the top 100 against somebody that's like 500 or 600 or 700 sometimes. So
they just tighten the range.
Yeah, they tightened the range by a lot. So I think the range is somewhere in 100, maybe 150. So the swings, of points that you get if you're, in the dumpster and trying to get up is much smaller. It's like very, very hard actually to get out of the dumpster without actually playing a ton of games to get out of there. At the same time, it's a little bit harder to actually drop, in big ways too. So it's much better for the folks. I think in the end, I think everybody agrees that this was a better change, or this change is good. It's just, nobody knew about it until like all the players were basically, hey, are you noticing this? Yeah, I'm noticing this too. It's like, oh, there must be something. And then, they did message Ixar, and Ixar didn't really tell anybody until like the day after. So
well, he didn't even know. So
he wasn't even aware at that point.
Yeah, that was the biggest thing. He didn't know. So he was actually looking into it, and then
but just to go back to Ratsmah's point, is that they need to find a way to make these types of changes transparent. I think to the community.
It's a bigger issue though with the one thing that Ratsmah's talking about though, because balancing based on percentages, like appearance percentages, is something that will never be transparent. Like, I don't know how you would even do that. You know, like when you're showing a
Yeah.
card, you show, oh, you know,
At
this
that
one's
point, you
actually
probably should
coming.
just take it out of the
Yeah,
arena
it should
completely.
either be removed. Like, balance should either be just either remove a card or you keep the card, or you balance, you know.
But
you
even then,
change
like,
the stats.
let's assume I'm in arena that priest plays Eerie Statue. God fucking forbid. Do I play around Purify?
It
Like,
doesn't exist.
you're gonna say no, right? You're gonna say no by default. But somebody who's got no clue that Blizzard decided to remove it.
They're probably not thinking about Purify.
Yeah.
That's their
Well,
argument in this case. Yeah, but
I mean,
to
I
wrap
mean,
up-
okay, I do it better yet. I humility a minion. I'm not even gonna go Eerie
Mhm.
Statue. I humility a minion. Do I play around Purify?
So are you saying it's
Because
okay?
humility is a very different case than like Eerie Statue coming down, because that's just kind of a weird one. But
Well, it's
humility is
just-
something, it's very
Yeah,
realistic.
I just don't like the idea of cards existing in the game and not being available
Being in the
arena in general, honestly.
Precisely.
But and this is the thing. I think that the standard change. I can understand why like you don't like it, Ratsmah, but I think in theory it should allow them to better actively work on arena if they
Oh,
do,
sure.
right? Like
Yeah, it's more organized.
like right now it's like, okay, well, I don't know if you're actually going to work on it, so I think it's not that great. But if they do work on it, then it's a good change. And then to your Firelands portal point, it's like when you said the community dictates it, right? That's just the case. So you could, like, I don't know the win rates, but you probably are more aware. Like Firelands portal is probably just a better card than Flamestrike, I'd guess, in arena, like overall, maybe.
Mhm.
But
It's stronger.
Flamestrike feels bad 'cause it's like, oh, I made this army and now they're all gone.
Well, I mean, my question would be, where does it stop, right?
Mhm.
Now, you know, like maybe 2 years from now, a specific card, Firelands Portal is now offered at 65% win rate or 65% rate, and then Fireball is at like a 40%. And like, how do
Yeah.
you keep all these rules in check? You know, there's already so many things about Arena, like the Cthulhu cards and the ban cards and Purify not existing, and you know, percentages of class cards being offered over like common, like neutral cards. Like these things people don't know, and me, because I do it for a living, I do know them. And there are so many unwritten rules where someone trying to get into this game of arena, it would scare them off. Like someone like me who likes to really dive in, I would be like, oh, this is the rules for this game are kind of dumb.
They're
to be honest.
nonsense, right? They're
It is
complete
nonsense.
nonsense.
It
Yeah,
is
yeah.
nonsense. There's no. I should actually do this. Is like write a whole list of arena things. You know.
No, it's
Sorry.
it's
go ahead.
absolutely ridiculous.
You
and
mean
it's
like a
lazy,
rule book,
is
you
what
mean?
It is. It's lazy.
Like the rule book. Okay.
Like you, I don't know. It's it might just sound rough on the devs, but like Magic releases a set that is intended to be drafted. It's intended to be sealed. It's
Yeah.
intended to be drafted within not only its own set, the first set is, but then the next set as well. Like they're doing a lot to actively balance draft, which is the equivalent of
Wait.
arena in Hearthstone for those that don't play Magic.
Wait, so
And-
is it a subset of the?
No, it's
No,
not. It's
it's
just
the
It's the actual
set.
same. It's the same. Okay.
You would
It's literally
basically
the
open
same.
up a pack of Ungoro Crater, and you would
Yeah.
play a format where you play against only the other cards in Ungoro Crater. Okay, and they set the setup so they can be played like that. And because they didn't do this throughout Hearthstone's history, now we're in a position with Arena where these things have to happen because it's not balanced basically, and it's
I
a
see.
lazy way to balance it. If you balance it to start with, and yes, Purify is a bad card in Arena, but it doesn't matter that I gave it to you because hey, I gave you these other good options.
Right. It's just.
Then it doesn't
chance.
matter
Right,
because
yeah.
it all evens out. But because they didn't actively balance it when they put the cards out and they were lazy at first, it creates problems down the line.
Yeah, I like standard change if that's kind of reversed. I guess the problem is like when you have outliers in rarities, and I've gone back to that point like in the past where we talk about the rarity problem in general in Hearthstone, where every single set an equal amount of epics per class are released, an equal amount of legendaries, rares, and commons are released per class, no matter what. So what ends up happening is I'm sure there's this design like Abyssal Enforcer probably should be a rare, in terms of ability. But somehow it was determined that it would be an epic, a common. So suddenly Arena is out of whack because there's another card that's as complex as the average rare card that was already given to Warlocks. So now they're both battling for that slot, and there was a misattribution of the rarity icon. So it's like, I'm not too sure precisely how to fix the issue unless you allow like more cards per set to be rares, or if there's a way to like bump down, weaker average rares to commons.
Do they always? release the same number of rarities for every class? Like,
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
okay,
it's-
that's the issue right there.
Since the
Stop
since the
forcing rarities on the
beginning,
card.
Yeah.
exactly, since
Well,
the beginning of Hearthstone. But
I
it's
think-
fine. It's not a
I
problem.
think
But
within that paradigm, you can still do it. Like,
yeah,
there's not
I
a
agree.
lack of solutions. There are solutions. They just aren't doing them. Like, there's solutions to designing the card. You just put more effort into the set. Honestly, like, it sounds like it's harsh on them, but the reality is you already know what your constraints are. And I don't think that it's impossible to design around those, you know? Like, I don't think that, like, for instance, you could just not do the same amount of rares for each class. But I don't think that that's necessarily,
the
like,
most elegant way.
I don't think
Yeah.
it's constricting their design, the ability for them to balance it. Like, I don't think
Well,
that's the problem. I think that that's just like another lazy solution. Like, they could just take it away and then it becomes easy. But the reality is that balancing is not supposed to be easy. It's supposed to be challenging. You just need to do it right.
Yeah,
It's
but
challenging when you're trying to balance from like last expansion, you know?
Yeah,
I feel like they're
that's-
always playing catch up to try
yeah,
to balance the
that's-
last expansion they released. And that's what really screws it up.
Yeah.
When you
no,
add that into the mix on top of everything, it's too much.
I think I'd like to see a rarity revisit, like before an expansion is released. I don't know how much of that happens, but just somebody taking a good hard look at the cards rarities and say, you know what, this epic should be a common, or the other way around, just to make sure that
I think they
everyone
do
just
that.
doesn't go.
I feel like they're
completely
doing
out
that
of
I think
now.
they already
I'm pretty
do
sure
that.
that
Like,
we already
that's-
complained about that, and they're actually doing that. Was Warlock bad before Abyssal Enforcer in Arena?
No, it was always
It was
It's
fine.
okay, right?
top classes. Yeah.
Top, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean,
Abyssal
we've
Enforcers.
seen them adjust like rarities, and I mean, yes, there have been things rarities. Clearly, there have been cards that are way too powerful that were common, but we have seen them changes. So I think those changes are based on a little bit more than just the complaining of the communities. It's got to be a combination of the two. I'm assuming.
Yeah.
But so I don't think that's an issue. I agree with Ratsmah. I think that those shouldn't be a constraint. You know, just having like X amount of rares, X amount of epics, X amount of legendaries. I mean, I actually even think it should be just crazy weighted one way or the other, because it is all about correction. You know, like the Rat, if they just started and everything was like balanced right from the get-go, then yeah, we could, you know, we could have these constraints and we could just like put good cards and have it like be balanced as we're going. But right now we do have skews. I mean, it's skewed like in all different directions, and some classes are better because of the cards are just better. So I
Wasn't
actually
that the
don't
idea
mind.
behind standard?
It is.
We acknowledge our mistakes. Now we're going to actively work to balance.
I know, but we have we have an unbalance in the classic cards too. You know, in basic cards too. So it's deeper than that too, right? So I feel like just having the ability to correct would require us not having these kind of constraints where everybody gets equal amounts of cards. Like I don't want that. I want like, okay, if Hunter needs help or if Priest needs help, just give them more cards this release. It's fine. And then like the next one will be. I mean, don't do it to the point where everybody only plays Priest. Just correct it to an extent. However many cards you need to actually make a correction, not make it overpowered.
But I think it's actually much easier to, from the get-go, do an elegant distribution of rarity. I think that's just the easier way.
I really think that like there's something to be said for the distribution being like it is, and I really don't think that it's hard.
Yeah.
I do not think it's impossible to design what you're saying. I think you can adjust within the rarity. Like
I agree. I completely agree
don't
with
think
you.
it's like this hard thing. And if it is hard, then you pay the designers more and you get people who are doing more work or something. Like you find a way to do it, because in Magic the Gathering, the reality is that they're balancing a lot more factors in that game, and they're doing it every single expansion, and they're doing it better than they are in Hearthstone, in my opinion. Now, one of the reasons why that could be is because Hearthstone could be inherently like flawed, maybe from a design perspective. But I guess because you haven't played Magic, ChanManV, but like the factors that go into building a Magic set are so much more that I don't think it's impossible for the Hearthstone people to do that. Like if Warlock's too good in Arena, then I think there's a way. It's challenging, but I think there's a way to make the next Warlock set like buff or nerf Warlock in Arena and still do what you want it to do in Standard. It's just more challenging.
Yeah, I mean, you're essentially affecting the appearance rates by using rarity that way instead. You're balancing that by using rarity as the mechanism to do that, right?
Yeah,
That's basically.
Yeah,
what you're
sure,
doing.
but that's
I
okay.
understand
That's
that.
a lot
Yeah,
more
yeah, no,
manageable, I
that's
think,
within
than
the
trying
realm.
to-
it's better than saying that
parameters,
Flame
so.
Strike comes at 50%.
Yeah.
Whatever. Like it's a better solution,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
Ratsmah said, than just having these shadow rules, so to
Yeah,
speak.
sure.
Yeah, I mean, this is what they're trying to do with standardizing Arena, right? Is try to balance it. The funny enough, it kind of seems like the strong classes just got stronger. Now, like Warrior and Paladin seem really dead, and they were already pretty dead in the meta, and now it just feels awful to play. Whereas before it was challenging, now you cannot play those classes.
That's not good. So
I
now,
have.
oh, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, now with the spells showing up at higher frequency,
Yeah.
how does that help? Obviously, it makes gameplay a little bit closer to maybe what we see on ranked ladder, just with the possibilities of I don't know, maybe playing a little bit more of a macro game instead of just just each turn like you got to throw something down, kind of that question answer type of meta game that you were talking about. Does it help with that kind of thing, or if not, what does it help with?
So we actually got exact numbers from Ixar. Edwakta kind of baited him and like egged him on to give these exact numbers because we've never had like the exact proportions of what commons and basic and class cards and whatever that you would get.
Okay.
But now we know. Some things are still unclear, but to put things in perspective, now we get 150% the number of rares that you normally would see in a draft before this change. 750% of epics, which is humongous.
750%.
750%.
Okay.
And also, you can expect a legendary on average one in every run.
Okay.
I think the biggest change here is you're getting a lot more epics, whereas before epics were kind of like, oh, you feel your curve, because a lot of the epic cards are awful, like really bad for Arena. Too much setup, too much combo required, more constructed based, and you kind of need to build a deck around them. And so now you also, with the standardizing, take away the fact that we're changing rarity offering bonuses and rates for Arena. You're taking away GVG and Nax, which had a lot of 2-drops in them. And what tends to happen when you remove add more rares and epics is you're getting less common and basic cards, right? You're getting less common cards. And a lot of those common cards were essential for making a good curve. So what we're seeing is a lot less curve stone play. And what you're taking is just stuff that discovers. You're trying to Cabal Courier into huge AoE spells and you just throw things on the board where before you kind of set up like, oh, I can play this 2/2 on the board against this 3/4. It's safe because I have a follow-up plan to do exactly 2 damage to it with Volcanic Potion. Like everything was so exact before, but now the game has slowed down so much because you can't build that early pressure because you don't have neutral cards like 2-drops. You don't have basic things to play Curvestone, and you're just picking Discovery. It doesn't matter what is left on the board, what the board looks like after the trades that they make that you give them, because you're just going to Dragonfire, and that's an epic card again, which is offered way higher. And it's just like huge blowouts in games now. You just puke all over the board with bad minions, and then you just like
sounds like that sounds like rank ladder.
It's early in the arena change, but one thing's for sure is that it is it's a ridiculously huge difference. Like it's gigantic. Like and this is something that Ratsmah just covered. People don't think about is like we know this from standard is that the 2-drops in standard are significantly weaker than they were in wild or were previously. And just changing to standard has a huge effect on the whole arena because all of a sudden the 2-drop slot's much weaker and it's not as much more powerful than your hero power. And like the ramifications this has are just it's hard to predict it from a design standpoint. Like as of someone who balances, like you can say, well, oh, we played like a bunch of arenas against each other, but it's just so tough to like see just how far it's going to go. Yeah. So yeah, I definitely.
2-drops, correct me if I'm wrong, Ratsmah, was one of the most important slots, right? I mean, because you would play multiples later in games, or you obviously 2 on curve.
Yeah, it helps you curve out and smooth out. You can both clear and play 2-drop very easily. But I mean, it's not necessarily a bad thing. I'm just mentioning it that this is how it is. I think we've been stuck in this like you build tempo every turn meta since GVG because of the dominance of Paladins, and you have to not fall behind or else you're just dead. But we've slowly been getting away from that. We have more taunts that are very viable in arena that we pick. So like these rush down strategies aren't as strong. And I just think the spell minion distribution has been flopped so hard that it's going to take a lot of players time to adjust to, oh, I don't have to play a 2-on-2, or I can play a Tomb Spider on 4. I don't have to play a 3-5 just so I don't fall behind. So I think it's just a adjustment period, which may be a little bit awkward.
Man,
It'll be interesting
I
to
kinda-
see the win rates from this month.
I
The
mean,
stats from this month of Arena, yeah.
Yeah, it's just the games play out differently, which I love. I love that it's different, but we got to see it in the long run.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't play much Arena, so I'm definitely a complete casual Arena player, but it bums me out a little bit that it's changed so drastically, because the one thing I've always appreciated about Arena is that it was a very good exercise in value trading, tempo, establishing. I mean, just like there was no margin of error in a lot of times, and it was not forgiving in many games. So I've always appreciated Arena in that sense. But if removal spells especially, become significant, then that sort of thing is basically removed. I mean, it just disappears, because removal spells make up for many mistakes. That's the one thing that I've always felt, that the standard or the ranked play was very different from that standpoint. You could play a control deck and make a lot of mistakes and still win games, where Arena, you couldn't do that. You made one mistake, okay, maybe you're okay. Make 2 mistakes, you probably lose. Like, especially if you make them early on in the game.
Just snowball effects, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I love that. That's the one thing I loved about Arena, and wanted to eventually have time to really get better at it. So if it's just completely changed and it just becomes basically what we're doing on Ladder, that's...
No, it's not. It's not at all like Ladder.
I know, but it's
very
getting
different.
closer.
I mean,
getting a little closer.
I'll say something though. Like, I like the standard change because a lot of the cards in the new sets, for instance, just were not used at all in standard, and now they actually have some purpose.
Yeah.
Like stuff like Felork, Soul Fiend, the Spiked Hog Rider garbage. Like, they just don't exist. In the current play that we're used to.
Sure.
But in Arena, they're real things, and they're not even bad. So, and that's one big plus, I think. Just the amount of cards that you see in that format that you don't see in the normal one.
Yeah,
I think it's great.
Yeah.
It is.
What?
I mean, I feel like it is getting a little bit closer to constructed. I mean, just yesterday I played I've seen 1 Pyroblast, and I've seen maybe 0 ice blocks in Arena in the past 3 months since
3 months?
Mean Streets of Gadgetzan.
Holy crap!
Right?
Okay.
Since Mean Streets of Gadgetzan, I've seen 1 Pyroblast, no ice blocks.
I mean, I've seen Renos since the expansion in Arena. Like, I've been Reno Jackson repeatedly.
Oh, sure. But I mean,
it's been crazy.
The first game I play, I get ice blocked. He has ice block, which I would never even put it on ice block. You'd never play it on ice block. He Pyroblast me in the face. I'm at 9. And then he Pyroblast again after I pop the block.
So you had 2 of them in his
so
hand.
different.
So Zapex, dude. They're
Yeah,
up. They're
dude.
back.
750%.
And that's the thing. Like, whether or not it's better or worse, is the verdict's. It's not in on that or out on their.
Yeah, it's depending on.
It's just that it's a huge change, and it's gonna take time to adjust, like Ratsmah said, to really get it down, because it's like it's the same game mode, but it's almost like a whole new card base, really. Because I mean, it is, but it has dramatic effects on the Arena. Where in standard, you still keep a lot of the same. Well, I mean, besides the movement to standard, but in Hearthstone in general and ranked, it's kind of like, oh, well, they released 5 new good cards. Let me find out how to put those into my old decks. Where Arena, these types of changes have a dramatic effect. Yeah.
It's tough to even say it's like a really high skill meta right now. Just because the high variance and how good some epics are compared to how bad others are. You get offered Doomsayer plus, just I can't even name all the bad epics, but as opposed to someone who gets 3 Call to Wilds, it's a lot of it. I think a lot of it would be draft based and how lucky you get in the draft, especially with the added one usual 1 legendary per draft. Some people are gonna have 2, 3. Some people are gonna have none. It's gonna be very draft oriented and how strong your draft is.
Okay. Well, the most important change out of all of them was that you can use golden cards now in Arena. So how do you feel about that?
Yes.
How do you feel about
all
that,
the
Ratsmah?
changes?
I actually love it. I love it. Bring some style to Arena.
Did you have a lot of golden cards, or are you crafting them now, or what's up with that?
I haven't pressed my button yet, but I think my account is probably worth 400,000 or 500,000 dust. I have a lot of games under my belt, and it's like all arena games, so you get a free pack every time.
Yeah.
Okay,
A
that's a
lot of
lot of
that.
gold
Well, like
stuff,
even
man.
watching Chalky, who didn't play arena before, just like do the 30 runs, he's already gotten like 6K gold. He went from nothing to 6K, and then I was like, wow,
Really?
man, this arena thing actually gets you a lot of rewards when you start doing it, and you're
If
doing
I'm
you're
it.
making a
good.
plan for this. I'm gonna craft all the golden cards for the basic and common ones,
Yeah.
and just like work my way into like trying to make every single card golden.
There you go. Hearthstone
Mhm.
achievements,
That a
man.
boy.
Gives you something to
Well,
work
So-
towards.
hasn't Crypt been on this for a while?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Yeah, he's got it down to it.
I mean, you have some
science.
golden cards, right? Because
Because you open them.
because you open them. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a
There's like
chance.
certain legendaries that have like 4 copies of golden, just waiting for them to get nerfed. But yeah,
God, that's
Oh, I
brutal.
had 2 extra
That's
copies of
brutal.
Rag.
yeah.
Do you
Yeah.
really? Holy crap, you
Yeah.
guys, man.
Trying to
I think I
Well,
only have
dude,
like one copy.
I've known
of
that Rag
something.
was gonna get changed or nerfed somehow for a while, man. It's a long time coming. Like that one, I waited on.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, well, anyways, that's thanks for the updates. Definitely on Arena, and things are changing. Definitely good. I think overall that we don't have the stale meta in both constructed and Arena, but we'll have to see what happens at least in the next couple weeks, and then we'll have another big change in April. So at least for the next 2 months, we should be okay. Okay, let's talk a little bit about HCT Asia. That happened this past weekend. It's the last region to complete before Bahamas. That's going to be happening in 3 weeks, I believe. This Asia one, this Asia prelims was pretty wild, and I just wanted to see what you guys' thoughts were just generally on how different the decks were, and the gameplay was, I don't know, a lot of people were mentioning the gameplay, especially that B787 match against Lojam or whatever. But overall, Th3Rat, what did you think about that region compared to EU and America?
Well, people have always said that the APAC region is like one of the weakest, but I think they have like a lot of strong players. One major issue is that as Western players, you don't get as much exposure to the APAC region, especially like South Korea, for instance, where Lojam's like a streamer and he's like a known player. The Australian players were like shocked to find out that I didn't know who Lojam was before this prelim. They're like, oh, everyone knows who Lojam is.
You're like,
And I was
no, I've
like-
never heard about
And
the
they're
guy.
like, anyone who's competitive, like who watches the scene, like knows who he is. I'm like, man, I've seen 3 OGN Masters, and that's probably infinitely more than most Western like competitive players, and I still didn't know who he was. But as far as like the overall like people are criticizing plays, and like to go into Lojam specifically, I don't know if you see my Twitter chain, man, but I actually like loved Lojam. First off, he took the concept that I brought up when I was on the show last time about how you could just play decks that were geared to beat aggro without running renown.
That's what he
and
was
you
doing.
could achieve a percentage. He just did that. Now, someone could be like, oh, like his decks were bad, or he's like bad or whatever. But the reality is that you don't just randomly qualify for the HCT, okay? It's something that you work towards. And after he got into it, he had to actively design these decks from nothing, because these aren't decks that you just seen and you just made better, or these aren't decks that you made a new archetype that's insanely powerful. He has to conceptualize this deck list in his head and actually make it, and then he has to test it, which is insanely hard. He has to find somebody who's willing to play against a deck that they'll never see, and it's hard to find players who are willing to do that, because it's kind of like a negative waste of their time, so to speak. The person who's playing against him in play testing, like to get to the point where he submits the deck list is already incredible, honestly. And the fact that he had made it that far with that strategy, which is actually a pretty effective strategy if everyone plays 2 Patches decks and 2 Kazakis decks, because it's good versus Pirate Warrior.
Anything aggro.
It's decent versus Shaman. Yeah. So to get to the point where he's in the tournament, he's 5-2 is already incredible. Now, his first series on camera, I think Lothar was casting. Lothar was very critical of some of his plays where he saved the coin and stuff, and he was using hero power instead.
Right.
And and Lothar even went like as far as to go on Reddit and comment on the thread and say that Lojam's play was just bad, and that he was like glad that he ended up losing. But in that series specifically, where he played Paladin against Pirate Warrior, I was in a call watching with like a lot of other good and professional players, and not only was Lothar overcritical, but he was actually just flat out wrong in a lot of the plays. And I think that's something that we see a lot. Where it's easy to play Hearthstone from Twitch chat. Like it's very easy. It's very
we all
easy
know
to
that.
criticize plays.
I know that.
But eventually, you have these players who are and then in the top 8, Lojum threw, without a doubt.
Yeah, the defender play was a throw, for sure.
Lojum threw in the top 8 without a doubt. And we see people would be like, wow, this player's so bad, they threw, like, I wouldn't have threw that. But eventually, I wonder when people are going to come to the conclusion that, hey, man, we keep watching these people get to the top 8. And I think he played well in his series beforehand. And then they throw. People don't. I feel like people don't really appreciate the pressure or the mental state that you're in after playing that many rounds of Swiss, or you're staying up all night because you're not you're anxious. You don't get to play in many tournaments, so you're not like quite used to it. So you don't get the sleep that you want or whatever. Like these are all factors that actually, believe it or not, have a negative effect on your play, and that's why we've always had players who do well in tournaments or do well and say that they weren't playing their best. I know a personal friend of Oskaka, he said that he won BlizzCon, but that's not the best he's ever played in his life, not even close. He thinks he had played better multiple other times where he's playing from the comfort of his own home. You know what I mean? So the level of play in tournaments is always going to be lower than the level of play, like, for instance, even like online cups, where the pros are also playing in those because they're playing from the comfort of their own home and they're playing in a little bit lower stress.
I mean,
scenario.
Like, the throw, that he had against B77. I mean, that literally was the game that sent somebody to the Bahamas. So
yeah, and
it was like one of the final plays too. So he was just, I'm sure the pressure got to him for a second.
It would have been incredible for him to make it with not only those deck lists, but in that particular matchup where his opponent's lineup was so favored against him, to get to the point where you dirty rat those 2 acolytes out. For those who don't know, it was a control warrior mirror, but his control warrior deck is severely tech to beat aggro, and he was, before the game you have to look at the deck list as Lojum, and you have to decide how do I win this matchup given my disadvantage and value, and he needs to dirty rat 2 acolytes 20 turns into the game when there's no more cards left in the deck, and this is how he's going to win the game. He got there, which is already pretty good. Like most players wouldn't get there. Like they think, oh, it's control warrior, you just get there, but you don't just get there. Like this was a state in the game that was very specifically designed in his mind that he wanted to achieve, and he got there. But then he made the crucial error of not playing the sleep with the fishes instead of the blood to Icar and the other card, and it ended up losing the control warrior mirror. He played all those turns, not necessarily right, but he had the macro line in his brain. He played all those turns and got to the point he needed to get to, hit the dirty rats, and then just
didn't play it.
Fucked up. Very
but it's one of those things where he hasn't been in that situation before ever.
No,
I mean, literally, this is the first time. And some people are great at just figuring out problem solving things for the first time, and some people aren't. And obviously the pressure plus trying to figure it out. I mean, time was running out too, I think, for him, and I think it was right in that particular turn. So he obviously made the wrong decision there. But you're right, though, that particular matchup, and folks that don't understand it with control versus control warrior, the acolytes are huge cards that you don't want to play. Like you want to get those brawled and disappeared, and because you don't want to go into fatigue, basically. Like fatigue is a huge deal, so you don't want those acolytes to draw. So he wanted to basically pull out his opponent's acolytes so that he would be drawing, and that's what he ended up doing with the dirty rats. And so and just to give you, I guess, gives the guys like a little, or just the viewers a little bit of a just a feel for what kind of decks he was bringing. Look at this paladin deck. I mean, this is like shield masters and bruisers,
double humility
and wicked
double humility.
I mean, these
decks are absolutely just like insane. You have to be a madman to get to these deck lists. you don't just have to go against the grain. You have to, like,
it's full commitment. It's full commitment to a strategy. Like,
I mean, it's like somebody brought back like 2014 and said, "Let's make it novel," and they just went, "All right, fuck it. This is the old school control pally, and we're just revamping it. Remove all the older stuff and make it like new again."
you could just make an anti-aggro Reno, and that would be what people consider strategy. Hoy did that.
Sure,
That's something that's it's within the realm of like.
This is a derivative of just what's out there.
Like,
it's just a derivative of what's out there. Yeah.
It's within like the realm of possibilities, but to go and make these decks is just honestly, it's insane. And when it comes to the Lojin play where he messed up at the end of that Control Warrior game, it's so easy to be critical on that last turn. You look at his hand, you see the situation, it's so obvious you need to play Sleep with the Fishes. But the thing is most people wouldn't even have gotten to that point in the match, honestly.
Yeah.
And even if like you can execute that exact play don't, it's not like Lojin can't execute that play. He can execute it. It's not a play that's so deep that his mind hasn't fathomed it. You know, it's not like
ever.
It's this complicated play that, oh, if I had never seen someone else do that, I would never have even imagined. You know, it's like it's something that's
the thing
quite
though,
simple.
Rat, is that like, you know, you explaining all this, you know, on this show post, people didn't realize that at the time. You know, and that's the thing about Hearthstone. You know, like Hearthstone, like all these brilliant plays and these brilliant lines, they're not explicit like in the game itself. And
and casters have a huge effect on that.
Yeah, of course. I mean, casters are the translator. Basically, they're the translators for all this. So, you know, we depend heavily on them. You know, and that's probably one of the reasons why it wasn't appreciated. And Hearthstone is one of those games where it's like you can make all the right moves and then just make that one last wrong move and the game is over.
And then he also misplayed another series too.
Well, the last game was. I think the last game was the biggest one.
Yeah, he didn't attack with the weapon, which is a very obvious thing for people. But what people don't see in the turn where he doesn't attack with the weapon, and actually I think most players would say that he misplayed the all three of the last turns he made.
He should have removed the board too, the turn after that too. So
yeah, another game where he's not favored to win at all. But he got himself into a position where he was able to win. And when I say this, it's not like anyone can. It's not like you can just do that. Even if you understand the concept, even if you're skilled, he actually had to hit a percentage basically of scenarios where that can be achieved. Like you have to aim for it, but then you also have to get lucky enough that it happens, and then you have to execute it. There's like a 3-step process. And he came up short on the third step basically both times. But on the turn where he didn't attack with the weapon, what he was thinking is that he would need to clear a taunt totem if it rolled, I think. But then he could have gone a step further and realized that he could actually whirlwind execute a taunt totem.
Right.
But then maybe you would say, well, what if he plays 2 taunts against me? And there's a lot more in that scenario than just like, oh, my opponent's low, let me hit with the War Axe and then let me hit again. It's more complicated than that. It on the surface level, it looks that simple, but when you start thinking, how do I lose this game? How do I not kill my opponent? Well, it probably involves taunts. Well, maybe I need this War Axe to kill an O2 so I can push my Grom through. Maybe I need this Whirlwind to execute to kill a 5/5 so I can get through with my Grom through 2 taunts, you know? Because I really wanted to connect with this 10, and it's not so important to me that I get the 3 in now.
Well, he knows the rest of his deck. We
so
don't,
it's not so linear as people make it out to be. But it was definitely a mistake. I think he misplayed the 3 turns prior to that as well.
It's like a rant about Twitch chat.
No.
Like there's people who spam like, oh, misplay, lol, Twitch chat.
It was.
Is that a rant about Twitch chat, man?
This was a very high profile match, not because of the players. This is what I love too. It wasn't high profile because of the players and their storylines.
The misplay.
It was high profile because of the decks, the competition, and you know, like kind of how Hearthstone itself lined up. And I love that because neither of these players are big names, you know. And I really appreciated that, and a lot of other professional players I think did as well.
I think that's what we see in the APAC region a bit more. We see these commitments, you know, we don't see hedging at all. Where it is, I feel like what we see with EU and in America, they play the highest percentage decks, and you know sometimes they will like the strategies they make are really the decks that they bring. It's not necessarily the nuances in the decks themselves. Sometimes 1 card, sometimes maybe 2 cards, but not just like what we saw with Lojam here. But in the Asia, the APAC region, we see that a bit more. We've seen it historically. I mean, we saw like a Rager in there somewhere, right? Like somebody was playing a Rager, like in a Rogue, which was like, okay, yeah, interesting. I mean, it didn't work out for him. I don't even think he ended up getting to play it actually. But you know, it's interesting to see just a different group of players, you know, with I don't know, more risk taking, I guess you could say, versus just high percentage play, you know, because you see that in poker sometimes. You see guys that actually, you know, have much bigger ups, much bigger downs, and then you see the guy that's very consistent, you know, and there's different styles of reaching it.
I would.
That's honestly like the more fun part of Hearthstone. It's like just like trying out new things, right? Everyone knows when a certain card, which is like a staple for most decks, is good. But like exploring and trying to discover like new strategies, I think that's the way to play.
Yeah, like even though you play Arena Ratsmah, I'm sure you can even appreciate this guy's deck list if you looked at him. I mean, like we're talking double Sensions and all the decks. We're talking
Exactly.
double hit.
Dude,
Like this guy is
I'm the
so
same
far
way, man.
off.
Yeah.
Like this guy's
I've
so
done-
far gone.
I've
It's
done it
unreal.
before,
But I think
Babby.
I
that
play off meta all the time. Like I
the
pick like horrible cards in arena over a good card just to see what happens, you know, to see if I can like
Cool.
make the deck work.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
we've all done it. We've all had those days where we've literally played 10 straight aggro warriors and we're like, damn it, I'm going to build a deck that just destroys aggro warrior and nothing else. And then that's like when you put the double Sinjins and the double bruisers and just the craziness. But he actually did this, you know, in HCT, and that's why it's just completely amazing. Yeah.
the APAC region is the last region, which would allow theoretically for more creativity because there should be an established meta by the time it gets to their
The
tournament.
rounds,
Double patches, double Kazakhs did pretty well in the first two, so Alojam has a little bit more wiggle room than maybe someone in EU.
Yeah, sure.
So I think that looking at it from a logical, like, well, why do they bring riskier decks? Is it just because they're riskier in general? I'm not so sure that that's necessarily the case.
Yeah.
As much as they have a more established stuff to work off of encounter because there's been 2 HCTs prior to theirs.
Well, anyways, you know, definitely congratulations to the 4 guys that moved on. You know, B787 ended up winning, but Pomblad, Samuel Cho, Yulsek also made it to the Bahamas. So we've got the 12 guys going. It'll be pretty interesting to see which region comes out with a champion here. But
also worth noting that all 3 regions, I mean, there is only 64 people in the tournament now, and most of the 64 are going to be people you know, people that are high profile, just by nature. But we definitely seen an increase in the number of established players doing well, I'd say. Even in the APAC region, if you look like after round 5, if you like the players that are in the running for making it, like a lot of them are the better people will consider the better players or the known players of the region. So, and we saw in EU, you have like Show, Naria, Green, like you have a lot of people that have been around and they know what they're doing or whatever, regardless of how you think their play skill is. And then in NA too, you have, you know, Frozen, Amnesia. Like obviously you have a couple outliers within the thing because that's how card games work. But I think that you're seeing a pretty good representation of skill in the Bahamas. I'm excited to watch. So.
Yeah, it's going to be great. So that's going to be coming up again in 3 weeks. We'll probably touch on it in the next week or two. So save a little bit more for that. But why don't we do some quick Q&A and then we'll call it a day, guys. So Ahmed N, he's like our regular when it comes to our questions. He has a question here. Which card underachieved the most and why? His choice is King of Stormwind, Varian. Turns out overcommitting to the board was not a smart move. So I'll start this one off with Noxious. What card do you think has underachieved the most?
I want to say Cho'Gall because it's actually good compared to Varian Rin.
Okay.
Because I actually think the card can do something degenerate. It just doesn't know what to do yet. So, yeah, I think Varian Rin was bad from the get-go for most situations, unless you're like in a very specific spot. So maybe I don't feel the same way. But yeah, Cho'Gall feels like he's got something he could do that he just hasn't done yet. I don't know what it is about this card.
Warlock spells aren't as good.
I think what it turns out is that if you dip too low on health before, on turn 7, right now, it's just not a thing. Maybe at some point the card has some viability, but right now it just feels like a miserable.
I think the card would be good in Mage.
I hear they have a 7 drop that does that, right? Like, I don't know, man. Heard something about that.
Like Warlock taps, so life's already like kind of a precious resource, and then the cards, a lot of the Warlock spells you don't think about, but are like AOE, like Hellfire. A lot of the good ones are like they hurt your own Cho'Gall or whatever. Like outside of Siphon Soul, and you're not about to play Karakazam just for Cho'Gall. So it's like,
God damn it!
I actually think
about it.
I think the Warlock's like one release away from like potentially a Cho'Gall being good if the right cards are released. Like healing is a big issue too now that Reno's gone, so that's another thing added to trying to make Cho'Gall worthwhile. But Ratsmah, what do you think? Underachieved.
I'll give it an arena twist.
Okay.
Probably Th3Rat's Hog Chopper. Like you mainly look at like the basic and common cards, like the very common offered cards for arena. But I mean, it's not that bad for stats, but you know, you actually like never see an empty hand anymore in arena.
Yeah.
In the past, you did get into a lot of top deck wars, but the MSOG meta has shown that you don't even last that long against Warlock.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not very good.
All right.
It's probably the worst.
I don't think I've ever played that card in constructed, but I gotta play arena more, I guess, to be able to play it. Th3Rat, how about you, man?
Man, that's a tough question. Let me think. You go and let me think.
Me go.
For a second.
Oh God, Nico, why you gotta do that to me, man? I needed some time too. I think the most underachieved. I mean, underachieved is like, how do you define that, guys? Like, is
What's
it
the
just
card
a
you had
bad-
high expectations for, and it just fell flat on its face?
Yeah. I mean,
That's the way I defined it. Like I wanted Cho'Gall to be good because I mean he's obviously good-ish, and he sucked. That guy wanted Variant to be good, and it sucked. Th3Rat's Hog Chopper, 4-forward charge seems okay. Turns out it's never good. So,
I would say
good, that sucked.
so far. So far, I would think something like I tend to want to pick a hunter card, so maybe lock and load. So far, even the lock and load could still be good.
No, it was bad.
Potentially, but
it did underachieve.
yeah,
You're right.
It's absolutely underachieved because I remember even when Ray was on the show, and I mean, lock and load was potentially, oh my god, this is like literally card drawing, cycling and ridiculous amounts of card value. But the class has never evolved in a way that's even possible. I mean, there's plenty of spells. There's just not enough ways to make that kind of card value even impose itself in the game because it just dies. You just die too quickly, right? So yeah, I think that's my pick. All right, we're at you.
It's honestly it's so tough for me. I think that. I don't know. I get pretty deep when it comes to like the card releases, and I look at the people call it life coach math or whatever.
Sure, whatever it is.
Usually you're not too far off. I think that it's probably not a legendary or some big minion that for me. It's probably something smaller that I just wanted to be good. And then, like for instance, Savage Combatant, the Druid card.
Yeah, okay.
Oh yeah, that's
a good example.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
I want that card to be good so bad.
It's good in arena. It's great in arena.
It's awesome in arena.
It's found spots. There was points where aggro Druid, Beast Druid was a deck and it still didn't even see play. And it's like,
it's because it has 4 health, man. That's the reason.
It's a 6-drop.
No, it's a 4-drop.
No, it's a 6-drop.
You're talking about 6-drop with the I know.
No, it's a 6-drop.
Man,
yeah.
I feel like it's this thing where that example, for instance, to me shows just how important having an immediate effect on the board is, and how important like stats and the I don't like using the phrase curvestone, but curvestone really is, because 3 attack is a lot and it should give you an inherent ability to gain card advantage, but the reality is that card advantage just doesn't matter.
Yeah, card advantage doesn't matter.
That to me is just depressing.
I mean, that's the same thing as the lock and load. Card advantage does not matter at all, dude. It's just like,
yeah, you can have a hand filled with high mains, but you'll never get to play them because the guy dropped like Dr. Boom on curve. It's like,
it's
welcome
like
to Hearthstone.
I've got 8 cards in my hand, but you still get to go. You still get to go on the board before I do. It's like,
I think that's one of the things that I don't like about it. The more you bring it up, like lock and load is one of those cards that in Magic is like ban worthy. Like it's on the cusp of this thing is beyond broken. What the hell were they thinking?
Yeah, this is.
And now in Hearthstone, it's like, what do you want to play this card? Really? Are you
This is a
sure?
discussion about how Hearthstone's designed. When I say like the inherent design flaw, maybe
Yeah.
I think that something that I guess the developers do a brilliant job of hiding the design flaws in
Yeah.
Hearthstone, honestly, because I do think that the mana system and the resource system in Hearthstone is actually quite flawed, and I think they do a tremendous job of hiding it or balancing it despite that fact. Card advantage in Hearthstone is not really a thing because you can play a 1-drop and a Ragnaros in the same deck, and then you can just curve out. Because of how lands work in Magic, you can't ever play a Rag with a 1-drop. It's not possible based on math because you need to run a higher number of lands to achieve an 8-drop when you have it in your hand. And when you run a higher number of lands, you can't be aggressive because you have lands, not minions, to attack your opponent. But in Hearthstone, that's not the case. And that's why cards like Lock and Load just can't find a spot. And that's why cards like Savage Combatant just aren't good enough. And every time as a player came from other card games, I see these cards, I'm like,
I'm so hyped.
But they never work
Yeah.
out time and time and time.
Oh my
and
god,
time
this card
again.
is like amazing.
And I think I finally, with Mean Streets, I think I finally gave up on the dream of hoping that those cards are good. And it's too bad. It's too bad.
Well,
Honestly, you sound so sad about it. Like
I am sad about it too, dude. I think it's like all the similar players are just bummed out by it.
Yeah, I mean, the way I see it is, just have fun with it. And like Hearthstone's more of a casual game. I think we should accept this. You don't have to marry her, but like, don't be worried that she's not wifey material. Just date her and have fun. Don't try to make this the ultimate card game.
That's why I love Ratsmah, man.
No,
I
mean,
love
yeah.
Ratsmah.
I mean, I still enjoy Hearthstone. I still enjoy
Awesome.
playing it. I just think it's a lot different than Magic in that way. Like I played Hearthstone. I don't play Magic, so clearly I like the game. I like the UI. I like the design. I like the way it looks. Like I still enjoy the game in that way. It's just those types of cards don't work in this game, and they work in that game. And I enjoy those types of cards. I guess, like Noxious said, they're fun. So.
I mean, maybe if the cost was reduced, like maybe it's just a matter of them costing it so absurdly low that then it's just by default playable. But I don't know if that's enough.
I think it's just if the games were longer, like if they were okay with the games going longer, and that includes like the health. That's why I'm so excited about just a card that extends health, is because I've always thought that just a very limiting factor, and they wanted it like this, or the way to consolidate or just to make the game sessions concise is to limit it by the actual health. But that's very design restricting, and things like card value and that would become more and more of a thing if we had more turns. If we just had longer games. It's not.
I mean, you could have a whole discussion about how the design affects the game, but yeah, I mean, Hearthstone is very much intended. Ratsmah uses the word casual. I'd say designed to be short. The games aren't designed to last a long time, and the fact that they've done so well making it competitive, in my opinion, whilst within the constraints that they've been given.
Mobile constraints.
Is like quite good. I mean, the game wouldn't be where it's at basically if it didn't last, 7 minutes or didn't have short games or whatever. And you could say that's not supposed to be competitive then, but we've chosen to make it competitive. So the reality is it doesn't matter to me whether or not it's supposed to be competitive. At this point, maybe there'll be a time where, like Life Coach, I think that's something I should consider, and I might look for different alternatives. But I still enjoy Hearthstone. So.
All right, let's see. One last question, Lee here, and it's an arena question, so we'll pose it to Ratsmah here. With the upcoming change to arena to a standard format, what do you guys think of expanding on the idea of arena in that you choose your hero, exclusively choose between 2 expansions, and an adventure to draft from? With that in mind,
the player chooses?
You're able to draft a more refined deck in terms of synergy. For example, Blackrock Mountain, GVG for mechs. Sorry, Blackrock for dragons, GVG for mechs, Gadgetzan for Jade. So basically, you would pick the subset of cards that you could draft from.
I get all kinds of like proposals like this in Twitch chat. Like,
of course.
What do you think of this? What do you think of that?
Yeah.
And honestly, I love it. Even if they gave it to you randomly, gave you an expansion randomly, and then you face a deck with certain cards, you're like, oh, this guy has this set, and
then the guy got, this is cool.
Yeah.
Because the classes are so defined to what they do now, and everyone picks in the same way. And they'll always pick certain cards, and you can almost guess what this guy's deck is made up of. Especially at higher wins, you know exactly how they got to those higher wins. It's by combining themselves to the same winning strategy for that class. And generally, it plays out a lot like kind of like Constructed, where you know what's in their deck, more so than you would think. By having like different expansions for different decks, or for different decks, I think that's great. I think that's exciting. It changes up things, and it makes the game not solvable for a very long time, because you have to put into account how you draft your deck against, a paladin from this expansion as opposed to a paladin from another expansion. And it just adds more depth to it. And
eventually there would be a meta that would kind of
consolidate. Yeah, eventually,
but it would merge, but it would be very late.
It would take a while.
Right now, everyone knows to pick Warlock. Like, I don't think it would be particularly hard to find the best. I don't think it would be hard to find the best expansions to choose from. So I don't know how much I like this idea for Arena.
Sure, but what if they got them randomly, right? And they don't get to choose? I think that'd be fun too.
Pick your hero, but you get the expansions at random.
But then, like, the people who get the good one end up winning more often. I don't know if this is like an idea for Arena.
That's hilarious.
Yo, that's the whole point of playing Arena. I think, like, when I first got into it, I was like, oh, I'm gonna draft a deck with like 8 multiples of a single card. It's gonna be great.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to do.
Having fun, I think, more than.
Oh, I love it, dude.
Less about winning than the average person. I think that I think that you enjoy playing bad things as well as you can.
Oh yes, I do.
And I don't think that everyone enjoys that.
I used to be different.
Don't like losing.
Oh yeah, I used to like try to compete for like leaderboards. Now it's like, hey, you know what? You're fine the way you are. I'm not gonna marry you, but let's just have a good time dating.
Ratsmah's come to the right place in Valley Town, or at least Valley Town's like the combination of that now. It's a combination of super competitive and super fun stuff like that. So
I talked like two weeks ago about this, and it's just more ways to play Hearthstone. Like, I don't think this necessarily should be an arena format, but I have no problem with that being like a different format that they allow you to play, like outside of the current arena format. Like, I think that's an amazing idea, and I think it would be fun, And then, like, because I think that right now people don't necessarily have the mentality that you have, Ratsmah, towards arena. But if you start a new format that's already set up, that doesn't have any preconceived notions, then they'll be able to feel like it's just something you do for fun. And it's not about getting the wins and getting the rewards, because the way that the arena system's set up now, it's demoralizing to go 0-3 and play your best and with your deck's fun to most players. So I think that they want to do something like this. They shouldn't do it in the arena, but I think that they definitely should be looking into doing this, because they need to find more ways for people to enjoy Hearthstone, play Hearthstone, and engage with Hearthstone that are currently available.
Yeah. Like that's Blizzard restricting themselves. Like they talk a lot about why they don't add like a separate category for Wild Arena. It's like they don't want to split the player base, Yeah. I think these restrictions they make for themselves make the game hard to access for a lot of people. Hard to, maybe not access is not the right word, but
engage, I guess.
Yeah.
It would just be nice if they would have. I mean, it doesn't have to go to the point where it's like a custom game section or anything like that. But even just like, I don't know what you call it, like a sandbox or something where like you can actually have no deck restraints. Like you can, like how we have a wild decks and we have standard decks and they're designated that way. That'd be cool if you could have a third kind of deck that's just, I don't know what you call it, freeform
custom
deck.
games.
This is the thing.
It's like a freeform deck, and then you can play your friend or something like that.
Okay. Yeah, not necessarily Magic the Gathering, but any card game. You can just go to the store and buy a starter deck, and then Chairman, you can go to the store and buy a starter deck. We can just play each other, and we can just we could just run like 6 of one card.
Exactly.
And we're just having a great time playing on the kitchen table, but in reality, like, we're not playing by the constraints that other players play the game,
right?
Like at a high level at all, but it doesn't matter to us.
We make our own rules.
That's what makes it so great.
It is. I used to play with like 100 card deck.
Exactly. And then from that, you start enjoying the game, and then maybe you look into like advancing your skill or advancing your your dedication and like going to tournaments and refining your decks. But without that initial way to like grab somebody and keep them interested or engage them for a long enough time to convert them, into consistent players, I don't know.
Like last night on my stream, like we were just goofing off, and Immortal Lion was on. He like just finished his ladder run, so he was like all like relieved and stuff, and it's just I can finally screw around. So I was like playing with him, and I didn't actually do it on purpose or initially, but I was like not even paying attention. I missed lethal or something, and I was like, you know what? It'd be kind of fun to see how many turns I can actually miss lethal, You know, like what's the record amount of turns I can actually miss lethal without him killing me? And like just see how many turns it can, like what's the record?
Dude, that's
could I
terrible BM.
could I do no, but don't ever kill him. Like I mean,
Devil's BM.
you know, whether you kill him or not, but the whole point is like to figure out how many turns you'll push it, like up to the end. Like you'll literally push it, especially if you have Reno in your deck. You'll push it like to. I mean, I died like I think 2 times I tried it, but I think I got up to like 8 turns. But it'd be kind of cool, even just on stream. You know, like if you're just streaming it, just figure out like how many turns can you actually miss it, and you don't actually give a shit about winning or not. You know, like that's a different way to play Hearthstone too. You know, there's all kinds of silly ways you could actually entertain yourself with the platform that is Hearthstone. So it's
with the
it's
game.
kind of fun.
The game.
Yeah, with the game.
It's very similar to like Overwatch's new like custom mode where you can like make bosses and stuff, right? Just customize it your own way.
We talked about that, how they had those last time.
Yeah,
it's definitely interesting. It's you know, in reality, like it's just it's all sociology and perspective. Like I've played card games competitively for a long time, but when I played other card games, you know, I actually appreciated some of the fun things you're talking about. But when it comes to Hearthstone, man, I don't watch those videos. I don't find them entertaining at all, and it's basically because of how Blizzard has chosen to have me experience the game. Honestly, it's not that I like didn't want to like, you know, like enjoy those things. It's just that because of how they have the ladder set up and because of how they've encouraged me to play the game, I just naturally don't enjoy those, and it's kind of sad, you know, because I wouldn't mind like,
well, I mean,
you know, being somebody who enjoys that type of thing, and you could say, oh well, you can just do it. But it's
well,
not
that's the
so
thing.
simple,
like,
you know?
the reason why you play the game the way it is because it's structured that way. I think if like there were things that were structured that you would do these fun things for, like, let's just say there's a competitive environment. Let's say we do like a scavenger hunt of scenarios in Hearthstone, and we put a prize pool on that, and it all of a sudden became like a competition of doing fun shit in Hearthstone. I mean, then you might enjoy it more because it's like a competitive environment that just happens to do with just these silly things in Hearthstone. The issue is that we don't have those things. So the only thing that you can do is to go in and either like create this kind of fun thing for yourself, or just play within the, you know, how Blizzard wants us to play the game, basically.
Well, I think Blizzard is coming around on that too. Like you see them trying to incentivize you playing against your friend for that quest, the 80 gold quest, and then they have the tavern brawls. I think it just has to be more, because like me personally, if I get that quest, I re-roll it because it's a waste of time.
Yeah,
I don't have any friends, you know.
Nice. You need to add me then.
Like the tavern brawl, I'll just play once. I'll get my card pack. I'll be like, okay, done.
I'm definitely re-rolling the tavern brawl one every time.
Yeah, I did.
I'll
admit I re-rolled that one too.
Like I feel like it should be like, if you play against your friends, it should be the same rewards for like 3 games, you know.
Yeah.
I agree.
I do realize it's abusable, but there's also like things you can do to like stop that abuse. Like,
man,
you know.
Oh my gosh!
Is it a problem if it's abusable though?
People are getting free extra cards. Oh my god!
Is that
abusable?
abusable?
From us.
I know,
man! Someone actually had to sit there and handcraft these packs, I'm sure, with their hand.
And that's so sad.
Now we have to give them away for free. It's not like they just created.
That's the saddest thing. Like Hearthstone, you play against someone and you don't get to interact with the other person really. You have 6 emotes. You don't get to talk to them. Usually, when I'm playing a card game or a board game, I like to talk to the person that I'm playing against.
Yeah,
and you don't get that. And they disincentivize that. People flock to forums and streams because of this. And that's why, you know, the forum community is so important to Hearthstone, because you have no one else to talk to you about these things.
No, that's true. Like Reddit and everything. Yeah, I totally agree with that.
It's telling, like everyone says, when someone tries to add you and you're not like, hey, I'm about to make a friend today. You're like, this guy is pissed.
Yeah, he's about to DM me. And, you know, it's like my experience, though, like I think historically, if I added somebody and just see what they said, I'd have to say, like, the majority of them are positive, though. Like, I just think that those few that actually are bad, you just remember that, and that's like, oh god,
the fact that
honestly,
you expect
dude.
It is
it depends on the context. Like, if you crush them in a fashion that you know is like, I 4-mana 7/7 dim like twice in a row. I know this guy's not eyeing me to say, dude, this game was fucking fantastic. I know the guy's just about to empty like 2 weeks of frustration on me. So there's a difference in the context, I think, when you get added after a game. It's like you win with Lock and Load Hunter. I think people add you generally to be positive. You win with like Aggro Shaman.
No, exactly.
I'm not so sure.
Yeah.
Or you like literally top deck like the exact card that you needed to beat them. I don't think they're going to be saying anything very nice words to you. But yeah, so I guess all I was gonna say is that it'd be nice if I'm not even asking for a mode. All I'm asking is that we can create a deck that's free form. That way we can actually build arena decks. That's way you guys could actually do Lord of the Arenas, like actual real Lord of the Arena tournaments and things.
Yeah.
That'd be really nice. Okay, well,
defense it is tricky though, right? Like the whole.
It is tricky.
It's hard to get. Like if they did some of these things, I don't know if the player base would have ever grown to be as big as it is. But I think it would be more. It'd be more solid.
I'm talking about.
We're just talking about things that we want, right?
I'm talking about at this point.
Things that'll work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm talking about this at this point. You know, it's just.
Yeah. At this point now. Well, like if you think about WoW, this is a little off topic. But think about WoW. Like when it first started, it was very guild oriented, and then they introduced flex queues and stuff where you can just play with like people you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And they did this to basically people didn't have time to like play it as a community. And then they gave them flex queues. People were like, "Oh, this is great." But then after a while, people were like, "Wow, I really missed the social function that I had when I was playing this game." And like, it's harder. Like they don't incentivize you to do that now. So now the game becomes like more stale when you don't have friends to play with. Well, I think Hearthstone's the same way.
WoW is so Hearthstone is actually a single player game. You know, it's a single player competitive game, right? And I mean, you can say it's multiplayer because you're playing against somebody, but really your experience is single. It's not a team game. That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah. And you know, WoW, it's even though structured as a single player experience, it's really a team experience in many, with raids, with PvP, with just a lot of those different formats and styles of play. So there's a lot of natural options of socialization in that game. Where with Hearthstone, I mean, with the current format, like what we have right now, socialization is in some ways like frowned upon. It's actually frowned upon because you're like cheating in a way if you're like playing 2-on-1, against like a guy, and even though nobody cares that much about it in terms of just what's the way the game's supposed to be played, it's not supposed to be played as like a bunch of people versus one guy, and so they need to just create something that's a bit more. And they actually have to create a format to introduce socialization. That's what sucks about it. They can't just like, oh, we're just going to add voice chat to this, and then all of a sudden that helps them fix it. That doesn't actually.
Oh my god, voice chat in Hearthstone.
That'd be terrible.
With my North Sea Kraken, bro, it was so big.
Well, no, they have the BattleNet. They have the BattleNet voice chat now, right? That's what you're talking about, ChanManV? The new BattleNet voice chat. Exactly.
I mean, would you be talking to them during the games?
Oh yeah, that'd be amazing.
Voice chat is so ridiculous to me. Like Oskaka misclicked and sent me an invitation to one yesterday, and I was like. Like I never even gotten one before. I was like,
really?
What?
Yeah.
They have voice chat on the BattleNet client.
Yeah, they do. So
surprise.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, anyways, why don't we wrap up? Man, we've gone like 2 hours. So, great show, guys. Thanks so much for having you guys on. And again, I think we got a pretty good an array of perspectives on just everything that's going on right now, and we still got like a few weeks to go just with trying to figure out what they're going to be doing and maybe even drip feeding cards. So going to be a busy few weeks coming up here. Ratsmah, got any shout outs you want to do? Where can people find you?
Well, shout outs to the Yes Boys, Rat Boys, Rat Pack. You can find me on twitch.tv/Ratsmah. Stream every morning. That's pretty much it. Thank you guys.
Awesome. Th3Rat.
Yeah, shout out to my team, Splice, and everyone that watches.
All right.
Or listens.
Listens, yeah. Watches and listens. Listenership's actually pretty big. Bigger these days, actually, than I feel like the Twitch viewership. Noxious?
Yeah, shout out to Complexity, and shout out to you for putting the episode together and getting the people on. As usual, it was a great show.
Suck up.
Actually, Th3Rat, thanks for like last minute actually jumping in because Firebat had that last minute to take off. He didn't realize he had something already booked. Appreciate that, man. And thanks obviously Ratsmah and Noxious for doing the show. Also, let's see what else I'm gonna plug. Just YouTube always. Just the VODs are gonna be available a little bit later tonight. YouTube.com/ChanManV. The audios on SoundCloud, iTunes, Google. They'll all be there too a little bit later tonight. We are doing a streamer showdown on Monday. I finally announced just the actual day and time. It's gonna be 1 p.m. It's gonna be on Monday, not Friday this time around. Nox is gonna be hosting again, and we got a killer lineup, dude.
Oh geez.
Look at this
killing me.
lineup.
Damn.
I mean,
Had this been announced already? This lineup?
I tweeted
Yeah.
it today, so like we have to give Toast some real competition this time around because he's just freaking winning too much. So
What's his score right now?
I think it's 3-0, right?
3-0, yeah,
3-0
yeah.
now. He almost lost. Actually, it came down to the last question last time against Firebet.
Firebet almost had him.
Firebet had a
I mean-
50-50, and he guessed wrong. And yeah, so it came
Just
down
like
to the last
Ladder.
second. Just
Oh
like
my
Ladder,
gosh.
exactly.
When's the last time you seen Crip in a button up?
I know, that's from a year or two.
That's from like 5 years ago.
Yeah. So anyways,
Yeah,
it's gonna
he
be
had
pretty
much more
sweet.
hair back then.
Yeah, those of you who don't know what Streamer Showdown is, it's a game show that we do. It's game show like Jeopardy-ish, streamer show, Hollywood game nights mixed with party games type of thing. So it's gonna be a lot of fun, and Ben Bro's gonna be on, which is pretty awesome. Given maybe he'll break down some mad raps too. I don't know. And then Crip's gonna be on
Yeah.
Sky's Toast. It's gonna be a good time, guys. So definitely check that out. That'll be on Toast's. That'll be on Toast's channel on Monday. I'll obviously tweet out a little bit more as we get a little bit closer, but pretty excited about that. That's going to be it for Value Town, guys. So for Ratsmah, Th3Rat, Noxious, and myself, ChanManV, we'll see you next week.
Peace.
Later.
On record as
Bye.
experienced here today. Band was
Bye.
playing and there was a dead